About 7:45 a.m. on June 27th, 2023, Calvin Castine on the western edge of Ellenburg Depot, and we're at the former home of Phil Chevrolet here in Ellenburg, and we're going to find out more about, first of all, we'll find out how to pronounce that name. Invenergy, I guess, is my guess. And this outfit is having a little informational meeting, first of two today. The next one's at 4 p.m. for the people in and around the area. They've got a new footprint coming in for renewable energy production. We're going to find out more about that, and it's going to be in the Altona, Ellenburg, and Moores Forks area. It looks like somebody's going to come over and talk to me right now, whether I want to or not. Okay, we've cornered the fellow who we believe is he still in the picture there, Francis? He moved after I told him. I don't want to be. I know it's all about him.
Oh boy, okay, he's wearing metal.
And I found out that I was guessing pretty close here. Invenergy, right?
Yes, Invenergy.
All right, and what's your name?
My name is Ryan Hicks McCann.
All right, and Ryan Hicks McCann, what are you doing here?
So today we're here at our local project office, the Bull Run office here in Ellenburg Depot. We are hosting the Bull Run Solar pre-application consultation meeting, and this is a series of meetings that is prescribed in the 94C process, which is the permitting effort that we're going through with this project with ORES, or the Office of Renewable Energy Siting.
Okay, now your company has two sources of renewable energy, wind and solar, and you've recently done, within the last few months, the wind part of this, right? You're
Yes.
along with the wind.
Yes, that's right. So the Bull Run Wind and Bull Run Solar projects are being permitted in parallel. The solar project is about 2 months behind where the wind project is, and both of these projects came about through interest from local landowners. So the landowners that are participating in our wind project are also the same landowners participating in the solar project.
Okay, so people who are getting a wind tower would also probably be getting a solar panel or two.
Yes, in some cases. We built the relationships in our host communities with the wind project in mind, and a lot of our larger landowners, particularly farmers with open agricultural areas, came to us and asked, can you do solar as well? So that's kind of how the Bull Run Solar project got started.
Okay, so assuming a wind tower, how much acreage does one wind tower footprint cover?
So the bases of the wind towers are actually quite small, and by contrast to solar, one of the benefits of wind power is that you can, once the project is operating, farm right up to the base of the wind turbines. The solar panels obviously are spread out over a larger acreage, but also produce renewable power for New York State.
Okay, so you won't necessarily have a solar panel underneath the wind tower, or will?
Yeah, so our company is working to develop co-location engineering practices for these projects. We do our best to have energy-dense projects which utilize little land and produce a lot of power. The setbacks that we have from turbines are kind of an open discussion with our engineering group, but we're able to put panels pretty close in proximity to the base of the turbines.
Now your line going to the energy grid, are they separate then?
So the projects, because New York State has the 94C process, which requires separate permitting for the projects, each is designed to be a standalone power source. So electrically, they are independent until the power is collected to the project substation. Once the power is collected from the panels and from the turbines to the substation, voltage is stepped up at the project substation and transmitted over overhead electric transmission lines to the NYPA power lines, which you can see down on the bottom on the map behind me.
Okay. The Bull Run project, there's a Bull Run road. Does just a short distance from here. Is that where the name came from, or?
Yeah, that's right. So some of our older projects in our New York portfolio were named based on local roads. Another example I could give is Number 3 Wind, which we just started operating earlier this year. That's in Lowville, New York, and Number 3 Road runs right down the middle of the project. It's funny because we like naming projects that way because people from the area will recognize it and know where the project is, and we get to tell fun anecdotes like this to people who might not be familiar.
Okay, so this proposed project is going to be in the towns of Ellenburg, Altona, and Moores, is that correct?
So the solar project is located in those 3 towns, yes. Excuse me, the solar project is in the towns of Clinton, Ellenburg, and Moores. Altona is not receiving any facilities related to Bull Run Solar.
Okay. How about wind?
The wind project is located in all 4 host towns. So that's the towns of Clinton, Ellenburg, Altona, and Moores.
Okay. Yeah, town of Clinton. I think most people watching this know that Clinton is Cherubusco.
Cherubusco, that's right.
But not everybody.
Yeah.
So how far along is the wind thing? Are you close to?
Yeah, so both projects' timelines, like I said, they're moving along in parallel. The wind project, we are planning for submission of our project application to New York State later this year, in the fall. The meeting that we're standing at today for the solar project happened back in January for wind, to kind of frame the timelines here.
I saw some information on this. It said there's enough energy to power 23 to, I don't know, 26,000 or whatever homes. So we'll round it up and call it 25,000 because that's easier to put in your head.
Okay, sure.
And 23.7.
Yeah.
So 25,000 homes. How big a footprint are you talking about? Acreage.
So the acreage of the project, I don't know off the top of my head. That's a number I can find for you. Depending on how you want to conceptualize the project, there are a couple relevant numbers too, because the amount of signed acreage we have is vastly different than the amount of acreage that'll be what we call developed acres. And developed acres are any piece of land that's actually hosting project facilities. I'd be happy to find that number for you, but I don't want to misquote it.
Okay. And now does that figure, that 25,000 home figure, does that include the wind or just solar?
That's just the solar. The wind project on its own, I want to say the number is more like 125,000 homes. It's a difference of project capacity of 449 megawatts for Bull Run Wind and 125 for Bull Run Solar.
Okay. Now I know the wind blows up here quite steadily, but Cherubusco and so on aren't necessarily known for their solar.
That's right.
So why here?
So the Bull Run Solar project, despite having facilities in the 3 towns I named earlier, the entire footprint of the generation for this project is located in the town of Ellenburg. All of the fields that we will be siting panels which will produce the renewable energy are located in the township of Ellenburg. We will be collecting power via buried collection cabling through portions of Clinton, which is why they're included in this meeting, and also why we are in consultation with them for host community agreements and attending their town board meetings. And the transmission line for the project, which again brings power from our substation to the grid for the rest of New York to enjoy green energy, is located in Ellenburg, and Moores also has collection, I believe.
Okay, so where's the nearest home that's going to be beneficiary of your solar or wind project? Anything in upstate New York, or is it all heading south?
So the lines that we're tapping into for this project are the NYPA 230 kilovolt transmission corridor lines. They recently received an upgrade which has opened up capacity for, we refer to it as ATC, or available transmission capacity. That means that we're able to put the power on the grid and get it out to New York. That being said, in terms of where the power is actually going and whose lights it's powering, it's impossible to track where the electrons are generated and headed to. The analogy I like to use for electricity is that it's like plumbing. So if we were to put a lot of electricity on the grid up here at a new project like Bull Run Wind or Solar, it means that there's an influx of renewable power here, and chances are if you're hitting your light switches, it's coming from, the power is coming from one of the operating projects here. The fact that we're tying into a transmission line that is as high voltage as it is means that we can get that power elsewhere if needed. So if there is demand in Syracuse, in Albany, in New York City, we're able to get the power through there. And that's all handled by the New York ISO, or the Independent System Operator.
I know in conversations we had when Noble was coming up here almost 25 years ago, you need to be near a transmission line for one of these projects to work.
Yeah, that's right. So the size projects we do, we call our projects large-scale renewable projects, and or you'll also hear the term utility-scale projects. And that basically means that comparatively larger projects are being built when you were to contrast with community solar projects, which are often a single field tying into your local distribution lines, which are the lines that run up and down the road. So when we tie into the grid at a high voltage transmission line, it allows us to move that power more easily. Smaller projects that tap into lower voltage lines on your roads, that power is usually bottlenecked closer to home.
Okay. Anything, Francis, you want to ask? Francis Perrier, the county legislator for Area 2.
Have the power lines been upgraded to accept this power? And if they have it, when are they planning on doing it?
So the work to upgrade the NYPA lines here is actually underway as we speak. In fact, one of the landowners that I was meeting with last night, we had a project landowner dinner where we met with all of our signed landowners. One gentleman I was speaking with is actually working on the NYPA upgrades right now. So he was saying that they just finished a section near Krogan, New York, and they're working their way up towards us. So with our project schedule laid out as it is now, we anticipate that the NYPA lines will be fully upgraded, and those efforts will be wrapped up prior to our project's COD or operations date.
Anything else, Francis? Okay. Thank you, Ryan. I know you're very busy here, so we appreciate you taking a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I don't have a mic today, so I'm just going to try and project. If you can't hear me, please let me know. Also, feel free to come up. I don't bite. But thank you for coming out today. My name is Ryan Hicks McCann, and I'm one of the 2 developers on the Bull Run Solar Project. Over here is the rest of my team. Alyssa is my co-developer on this project, and then the rest of the people around the room that you see are Invenergy developers who are also experts in all this stuff. So if at any point you have questions throughout the day, find one of us and please ask us questions. We're here to answer them and help inform you about the project. We're here today to present on the Bull Run Solar Project. Today is the pre-application consultation meeting, and this is a required meeting that we host for any project that goes through the 94C process. I'll get into that a little bit later. But before I get started here, I just wanted to give you that preface and introduce myself, as well as say that you're welcome to explore the different resources we have around the room. Back in this corner we have maps of the solar project. On the right, or I guess the left as you walk in from the door, there's a project timeline and a fact sheet. And then we have some food and drinks for you all to help yourself to. So please help yourselves. We don't want to have leftovers, and we don't want to waste food. So thanks for coming out today. I wanted to talk first about who we are as a company. So Invenergy is one of the largest privately held renewable generation companies. We have, beyond this project site, we have a whole host of projects throughout New York State. And all of the people that you see in the room today are employed within New York. So we are all New Yorkers, and we work where we live. So this kind of shows what we do. Beyond just solar and wind, we also do battery storage and transmission projects. The company is very focused on creating a renewable grid for New Yorkers and across the U.S. So what is Bull Run Solar? We're developing a 125 megawatt solar photovoltaic project. This is located in the towns of Ellenburg and also Clinton, and we had a transmission line in Moores, which is shown here, and we're going forward with the project as if we are going to have facilities there. This is land leased from owned property, from private landowners. And we are going to be collecting power to our project substation and then delivering it to the NYPA 230 kilovolt lines, which run down at the bottom of our maps to the south. You can actually see a little corridor where there are no trees, and that's the transmission line. So a little bit about kind of what this project means for New York and for all of you here. The power that we produce at this project, 125 megawatts, is sort of an abstract number to many people, so we try and give equivalents for number of homes powered and things like that. This installation will power over 21,000 New York homes, which we're really excited about. We also are projecting about $2.4 million injected into the local economy annually, so you will all hopefully see the benefits of that. Listed behind me are also some carbon numbers and some figures about jobs. During construction, we're going to have over 300 people employed to build this facility. Once the project is built, the number of people staffed obviously drops a little bit, but we expect to have about 3 full-time people in our operations and maintenance group, or O&M group. So the timeline of this project is shown behind me here. Really what we are focused on as a development team is this first milestone that you see on the left, the application submittal. Right now we have been working for the past year plus to go out into the field with our consultants and collect environmental data, archaeological data, any kind of site data that is relevant to these projects. And that helps us design a project that fits in the community and avoids sensitive resources. So if there is a threatened and endangered species that we identify, if there's an archaeologically sensitive location, we are engineering a project to try and minimize and mitigate any impacts to those resources. Once we have a project that we're happy with and confident in, we bring that to New York State and we submit our application. After that, we have kind of a back and forth with ORES, which is the Office of Renewable Energy Siting. That is the group that reviews our permit and ultimately either grants or denies the permit. They will likely come back to us and have feedback on our application, asking us for additional information, and we will work over the months following our application submittal to provide them exactly what they need to fully vet the project. We expect to have the application to ORES later this year. We are also anticipating tree clearing and some site prep in 2025, start of 26, and that's really the start of our construction. The majority of the earth moving and the bulk of the heavy construction that will happen related to the project we anticipate will go on in the spring of 2026. All of this is leading to an operations date when the project is online, generating power and turning on your lights in 2027. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the environmental setting of this project. What is the land that we are going to be in? And in this PowerPoint, I've tried to summarize it in 2 sections. Effectively, there are 2 characterizations of the land that we're on for Bull Run Solar. One of them is the northern project area, which by contrast to my next slide is more heavily wooded and forested. You're looking at the St. Lawrence River and English River watersheds, and this is a more forested, grown-up portion of our project. By contrast, the southern bit of the project is located in more agricultural areas. So the panels that we are placing are almost universally located in fields that already exist. Tree clearing and things like that would be necessary to install the panels are minimal in these locations. So when we talk about building a solar project, we are looking for fields that are ideally not actively in use by a farmer, or that a landowner who's participating with us has said, you know, I could use a rest on the field, and what we will do is we'll install the panels, and we actually have evidence that has pointed to the fact that nutritionally the soil is recovering over the lifetime of our project. So when we ultimately decommission the project and pull all the facilities, we expect that the land is more productive than when we actually started. So it's an interesting point on the timeline of these things. So the land use, like I said, it's agricultural and it's forested. The other point I wanted to make about this particular project site is that relative to our other projects in our portfolio, there is a very low density of residences here. We do our best when we site these projects to pick land that isn't in community centers or close to a large residential area, and at least by contrast to the rest of our portfolio, Bull Run Wind is in a very rural, very agricultural setting. So with the siting of the facilities combined with methods of vegetative screening and visual screening, we hope to have a project that is producing a lot of power for New York, a lot of power for all of you here, and also is not you know, right in your backyard as something that you're seeing every day. The local agency funds is something that is part of the 94C process. So behind me is some information. This is a pretty text-heavy slide, so just bear with me. But there is a method by which you can request funding to be an intervener in these projects. That means that you are kind of a participant in the review of the projects beyond the regular scope of just a community member. This information is all listed on the New York State ORES website. Again, that's Office of Renewable Energy Siting. And I can also step aside at the end of the meeting if anyone wants to learn more about this and kind of explain some of the text on this slide. Also, these resources are available in this office anytime you need them, so it's not like today is a one and done event. The potential impacts of the project that we are considering and that we are required to consider in our project application include visual impacts, transportation, environmental and cultural resource impacts, as well as an emergency action plan, which is currently in draft. Some of these things happen in consultation with your elected officials and your community members. So we engage local historians on cultural resources and visual viewpoint modeling locations. We solicit feedback from board members and elected officials on the environmental aspects of the project site, as well as those resources I just talked about. Transportation is something that I've spoken with the Clinton Town Board and Ellenburg Town Board about, specifically related to the school and minimizing our traffic in front of the school during construction. And then the emergency action plan is something that we take a first draft at, and then we come and meet with your first responders, your firefighters, your EMTs, your police officers, and we basically run through the plan with them, ask if they have feedback, and try and have something that's going to be workable when the project is operating. The other thing that I'll note on the emergency action plan is that given the number of projects that are already operating in this area, renewable energy projects specifically, I've heard feedback from town boards that if we can try and draft a plan that will work in concert with the already operating projects, that's something that they're interested in, and we're actively kind of pursuing that, that idea. So. Here's our contact information. You're also welcome to grab any of the business cards that are around the room. I have business cards, and so does Marie Egan, who's our local representative. Also listed here is Alyssa Hessler's information and the Orchard Park address, which is our office in Buffalo. It's in Orchard Park, but it's near Buffalo. Alyssa is my co-developer on the project, and she handles more of the 94C state-level permitting efforts. So if you have any questions about that process, she is more an expert than I. Here is a photo of the office that we're currently sitting in. We recently were able to open this office, and it's something that the team and I are pretty excited about. We had an office in this project area some years ago, but due to a fire, unfortunately, we had to shut it down. With the recent kind of renewed activity on the permitting side and the development of the project, we wanted to reopen our doors and make sure that we had a space that community members could help we could help community members find information and engage with us about these projects. And so listed behind me is the address of this building as well as the hours that we are regularly opening it. I would note that the hours that are listed on this slide and on the door here are somewhat subject to change, as Marie is staffing this office solo when I'm not able to be in the project area, and a lot of her work is actually in the field with our consultants, with our landowners. And so if you come in and you miss us, drop me a note. Like I said, my cards are around the room. You can always get in touch with me by phone or email, and we're happy to schedule a time that's convenient for you to come in and meet with us. This concludes the presentation. I wanted to ask if anyone had any questions, but I also have a note card here that was dropped off with a question that I can address now. So this question, I'll read it verbatim and then I'll give my answer. So the question, the first one listed here is, how does this project benefit the local community? There are a number of ways that I could answer this question. We could talk about the financial benefits of this project, the fact that we're going to have over $2.4 million invested in the host communities each year from this project. But I think more than the financial numbers, I would point to our host community agreements. So what we do for all of our projects is we try and communicate with the local town boards or whatever local agency would likely oversee the projects if ORES and the 94C process weren't in place. So the permitting of these projects runs at the state level now. However, back in the day, 10, 20 years ago, it would be your local board who was ultimately either granting or denying a permit on these projects. With respect to that, we try and meet with these local officials and see what the community interest level is, what their priorities are. And our host community agreement is inclusive of financial compensation for hosting our project, but more importantly to me as a developer, it lays a foundation for how we are supposed to do business in the community, how we can be good neighbors in your community. And this ranges from terms related to road use and transportation restrictions to things like community representatives who will be on site during construction of our project, monitoring our work and making sure that we're doing things to the standards of your towns. So we build these projects in compliance with all of the siting standards of your communities or those of the state, and we are working within them to try and build a project that's going to work for this community or these communities. The second question here is, will a certain percentage be credited to our electric bill, NYSEG? So yes is the very short answer. New York State has a program, which the name eludes me at the moment, but the way it works is we are paying $1,000 per megawatt that we generate to your local utility. And those funds go to the utility annually, and those funds are used or directed by New York State to be used for local ratepayers' electric rates. So for Bull Run Solar, at 125 megawatts, that means you're going to see $125,000 that we have to pay NYSEG every year for the first 10 years. That should go directly towards your electric bills in this area. The one thing that I would, distinction that I'd make related to this is that once we pay the funds as prescribed by New York State, they're out of our hands. And how your local utility, NYSEG, actually allocates those funds and uses them is behind a curtain to us. So I would recommend anyone who's interested in learning more about how they intend to use those funds to apply them towards your rates, I recommend that you reach out to NYSEG on that. Other than that benefit to your electric rate, what I would mention is that the way we conceptualize electricity is that it's similar to plumbing. So if we're injecting a lot of power onto the grid here, we expect that power to be used more locally immediately. That being said, the transmission corridor that we are connecting to is a high voltage line. It is designed to transport electricity over long distances and make it accessible to the entire state. So if we were able to track an electron from where it's generated at our panel to the light bulb it turns on or the microwave it powers, that would be a really interesting case study. But unfortunately, we can't do that. There's no way to. So generally what I like to explain to people is that we're putting this power on the grid and making it available to everyone, and the fact that we're tying into the high voltage line just spreads out our ability to deliver that green renewable power, that power made here in New York, to all of New York State. And I see my battery is running low, but you don't see that. So those are the two questions on this card. I hope I answered them thoroughly. If not, please find me after this and we can talk more about it. In the meantime, are there any other questions that I could answer? Sure.
You mentioned decommissioning. What's the lifespan on the wind and on the solar?
So we expect our projects to operate well beyond 30 years. Ultimately, you know, the lifespan of these projects can be affected by the weather and environmental factors. It also can vary manufacturer to manufacturer, but we usually use the number of 30 years as the standard. Pointing to a project that's actually operating nearby, there is a repower happening where they're swapping out the blades on older turbine towers, and they're calling it repowering the project. And that's something that, you know, would be way down the road for us, but it's a good example of how these projects, even at the end of their initial lifespan, can have new life breathed into them. Decommissioning, in terms of actually taking the facilities out of the project site, is a bonded activity. So we put money in bond with the towns, and at the end of the project's effective lifespan, if the town wants the facilities removed and we are no longer generating electricity, for solar, all of the piles are pulled out, all the panels are removed, and the fields can be returned to agricultural use.
But theoretically, we don't know what 30 years of progress is going to do here.
Yeah.
Theoretically, if it works now, there's no reason why you wouldn't want to continue 30 years from now.
Well, you said
That's right.
all of them could be pulled out. Who's going to do that? You?
Well, so we can, or like I was just saying, the decommissioning funds will be bonded with the town. So in the event that the project doesn't generate electricity and the town wants to move forward with decommissioning, they'll be funded by us to do that process if we don't take it on. But ultimately, what we've seen at our other operating project sites, which are all throughout the U.S., is that these facilities, while they may have a nameplate life of 30 years, we expect them to be operating well beyond that. There are solar panels that have been in operation on people's homes since the 70s and 80s and are still producing power. You just see a drop in efficiency as time goes on. Any other questions? Sure, in the back.
The way things are now,
Mm-hmm.
do you think you'll have any problem in getting 300 employees?
You know, we work closely with a lot of different labor unions in New York State. We haven't had issues mobilizing the manpower that we've needed to build these projects before, and because Invenergy is such a large company and we have operating projects in New York, this is sort of our bailiwick. We're able to pull those resources to different parts of the state, excuse me. So we don't really anticipate an issue with mobilizing the resources to build the project. And I can actually happily point to the fact that locally there are a lot of people in the trades. I've spoken to landowners in our host communities about supplying, well, I'm blocking the screen, about supplying things like gravel, plowing, paving, all sorts of different services. And so we hope that we can source a lot of those, a lot of the human resources that we'll need locally here near the project. But we will work with the trade groups to bring power in, or excuse me, I'm talking about power, to bring human power in if necessary.
We've had a lot of local interest already, people asking already when we're hiring, so
Yeah.
I think there's quite a bit of people here looking to jump ships and change jobs.
Definitely, yeah. Any other questions? Sure.
When and if this project goes through and it's on search, goes online, does the local community get first crack at signing up for the energy before the rest of the state?
So the way that we build these projects is that utility projects like ours are contracted with NYSERDA. So for that reason, the power is sort of sold to the grid itself, not to individual landowners. But there are opportunities, I know, for local landowners to source their electricity renewably through community solar projects done by other outfits. I know in Moores there have been quite a few solar projects that have popped up. And to draw a contrast between how those projects operate and how our projects work, community projects generally tap into what we call the local distribution lines, which are the power lines that run up and down the road. Those are lower voltage lines, and usually that means that that power is more readily available for the homes directly adjacent to the panels. So if that were something you'd be interested in, I would recommend reaching out to your utility. They might have different incentives and programs that you could research to find out how to basically source your energy renewably. Anything else? All right, well, thank you very much. Again, my name is Ryan Hicks McCann. I'm one of the developers on this project, and we'll be here all morning and later again this afternoon if you have any questions. So thank you for your time.
That'll wrap up our brief look at what's happening today. If you have any questions, you've seen the contact information there, and also I'd suggest contacting your local town officials to see what they can do to represent your views as this project continues. And before our final closeout, Ryan came out to give us a slight correction. You wanted to set the record straight here.
Yeah, that's right. So the host community benefit program that's run through NYSERDA is a bill credit program. We effectively pay the local utilities, and those funds go towards a credit towards local ratepayers' electric bills. And in my presentation, I had quoted $1,000 per megawatt, which is the rate that we pay for all of the wind projects that we do. For boron solar, the incentive rate is $500 per megawatt. And again, this is a 125 megawatt project. So I just wanted to correct that.
Okay. All right. And again, your office is here at the former Phil's Chevrolet in Ellenburg Depot. So you saw their hours, call, but there's a number they can call and people have got questions and so on, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Anyone is welcome to reach out to me directly. My line is 607-391-2651.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.